Yesterday, NASA put 4 people on a rocket and shot them toward the moon for the first time in 54 years. And here's the part nobody's talking about. They did it on April Fool's Day with a heat shield that fell apart on the last flight, using a rocket that costs $4 billion per launch, when SpaceX can do the same thing for $100 million. I have questions, a lot of them, and by the end of this video, you will too. April 1st, 2026, 6:35 p.m., Kennedy Space Center. The Space Launch System, the most expensive rocket ever built, lifts off carrying the Orion capsule, call sign Integrity. 4 astronauts inside: Reid Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, Jeremy Hansen. First woman toward the moon, first black man toward the moon, first Canadian toward the moon. Sounds historic, right? Inspiring? Now here's what they won't tell you on the evening news. This capsule, this exact spacecraft, has a heat shield that NASA's own inspector said could kill them on the way back. A former NASA astronaut, a guy who flew the first shuttle mission after Columbia, publicly said this mission is not safe to fly. And they launched anyway on April Fool's Day with a $93 billion price tag. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a person who can read, and what I've read terrifies me. Let me show you what I found. Let's start with what should be the biggest story in aerospace right now, and isn't. December 2022, Artemis II uncrewed, no people on board. Orion flies around the moon and comes back. NASA calls it a success. Celebrations, high fives. But here's what they didn't tell you for months. When engineers examined the heat shield after splashdown, they found something terrifying. Over 100 locations where chunks of the heat shield had ripped off, not burned away evenly, the way it was designed to. Ripped, gouged, torn out in irregular pieces. The avcoat material, the stuff between your astronauts and 5,000-degree plasma, had failed. Gases trapped inside expanded during re-entry and blew out chunks of the shield. 4 separation bolts partially melted through their thermal barriers. And here's the part that should make your blood boil. NASA knew about this, and for months, they said nothing. The first public mention? March 2023, 3 months later. The photos of the damage? Not released until the Inspector General forced them out in May 2024, a year and a half later. Question: if this was a car and the manufacturer knew the brakes were failing and hid it for 18 months, what would you call that? Now here's where it gets worse. Charles Camarda, NASA astronaut, heat shield expert. The man who flew the first space shuttle mission after Columbia burned up on re-entry, killing 7 people because of heat shield damage. Camarda looked at the Artemis data and said, publicly, this mission is not safe to fly. He compared it to Challenger. He compared it to Columbia. 2 disasters, 14 dead astronauts, and he sees the same pattern. NASA knows there's a problem, doesn't fully understand it, and flies anyway. NASA's response? They changed the re-entry angle. Instead of a skip re-entry, bouncing off the atmosphere twice, they'll do a direct plunge. Steeper, faster, hotter. The hottest re-entry any crewed capsule has ever attempted. And the heat shield itself? Same material, same design. They're planning a new design, but that's for Artemis III. The astronauts on Artemis II, they get the old one, the broken one, the one they couldn't replicate the failure of in ground tests because, and this is a direct quote from NASA's own heat shield deputy manager, ground tests cannot replicate actual re-entry conditions. Let me say that again. They can't test it on the ground. They tested it in space and it failed. And they're sending 4 humans on it anyway. Question: is this confidence, or is this something else entirely? But the heat shield is just the beginning. Because when you zoom out, when you look at the money, that's when you start seeing a picture that's much, much uglier. $93 billion. That's what the Artemis program has cost American taxpayers between 2012 and 2025. $93 billion. For context, that's more than the GDP of 130 countries, more than the entire annual budget of the Department of Education, more than NASA's total budget for 10 years. And what did $93 billion buy? One uncrewed test flight that damaged the heat shield, and one crewed flight that doesn't even land on the moon. They fly around it, they take pictures, they come home. That's it. $4.1 billion. That's what each SLS launch costs. Each one. Every time that rocket goes up, $4 billion goes up with it, and then it falls into the ocean. Because SLS is expendable. They throw it away every single time. Now, let me show you something. SpaceX Starship, same destination, same payload class, cost per launch $100 million, potentially less, 40 times cheaper, and it's reusable. The rocket comes back and flies again. The SLS rocket uses 4 RS-25 engines. Each one costs $145 million. Total, $583 million. Just for the engines. SpaceX Starship uses 39 Raptor engines at less than $1 million each. Total, $39 million. $583 million versus $39 million. For engines that do the same job. Question: why does NASA use SLS instead of Starship? Answer: Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman. Boeing builds the SLS core stage. Lockheed Martin builds the Orion capsule, $1.03 billion per unit. Northrop Grumman builds the solid rocket boosters, $336 million per pair. These contracts are cost plus. That means the more it costs, the more the contractor gets paid. Read that again. The more it costs, the more they earn. Every delay, every redesign, every overrun is profit. The program is years behind schedule. Originally supposed to fly in 2017, it's 2026, 9 years late. And every year of delay, more money for the same 3 companies. Question: if you were Boeing and you got paid more every time the project was late, would you want it to be on time? This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is how the contract is structured. It's public. You can read it. But here's the deeper question. The one that conspiracy theorists have been asking for 50 years, and that Artemis accidentally made more relevant, not less. If we went to the moon in 1969 with less computing power than your microwave, why did it take 54 years and $93 billion to go back? And if we did go in 1969, why does it seem so impossibly hard now? December 14th, 1972. Apollo 17, Gene Cernan steps off the lunar surface and into the module. Last human footprint on the moon. Then nothing. For 54 years, nothing. No country, no agency, no billionaire. Nobody went back. The greatest achievement in human history in science and so... And we just stopped. The official explanation? Money, political will. The space race was over. The Soviets gave up. No reason to keep going. Okay, fine. But let me ask you this. In 1969, NASA built the Saturn V, the most powerful rocket ever created, 363 feet tall, capable of putting 130 tons into orbit. They built 13 of them. They worked, and then they destroyed the tooling, scattered the engineers. And when the question came, can we build another one? The answer was, not easily, because the institutional knowledge was gone. The vendors were gone. The manufacturing processes were obsolete. Now, is that lost technology? Technically, no. The blueprints exist, some of them in scattered archives, in retired engineers' basements, in contractor warehouses. But the ability to build it? Gone. And that's what feeds the conspiracy. Because the argument is devastatingly simple. If we did it in 1969 with slide rules and duct tape, why can't we do it now with supercomputers and AI? Why did it cost $93 billion and take 13 years just to fly around the moon, when Kennedy did the whole program in 8 years for $157 billion in today's dollars, including 6 landings? The conspiracy theorist says because we never went, the moon landings were faked, and everything since then has been a cover-up to avoid having to do it again. I don't believe that, and I'm going to tell you why. But I'm going to be honest, the official story has gaps you could drive a Saturn V through. The evidence for the moon landings is overwhelming. Laser reflectors on the lunar surface that scientists bounce beams off to this day. 842 pounds of moon rocks analyzed by labs in every country on Earth. Independent tracking by the Soviet Union, who had every reason to call it fake and never did. Photos from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter showing the landing sites, the descent stages, the tracks in the dust, even the American flags. 400,000 people worked on Apollo. Not one credible whistleblower in 54 years. So, no. We went. That's not the question. The question is, what happened after we went? And why does the return look so dysfunctional, so expensive, and so suspicious that it's feeding the conspiracy instead of killing it? Because here's what nobody wants to admit, but he wants. The biggest gift to moon landing deniers isn't some blurry photograph from 1969. It's Artemis. Right now. Today. Think about it. If you wanted to prove to the world, once and for all, that America went to the moon and can do it again, what would you do? You'd build a sleek, efficient spacecraft. You'd land on the moon. You'd live stream in 4K. You'd plant the flag, show the old landing sites, and shut up every denier on Earth forever. Instead, what did we get? A $93 billion program that's 9 years behind schedule, a heat shield that falls apart, a rocket that costs 40 times more than the alternative, cost-plus contracts that reward failure, a mission that doesn't even land, just flies around and comes back. And they launched it on April Fool's Day. If you were writing a script to make people doubt NASA, you could not do better than this. And the conspiracy theorists are having a field day. Here's what they're saying. And I want you to listen, because some of it is insane and some of it is uncomfortably rational. Theory 1. It was all fake and they still can't do it. The argument, if we really had 1960s technology that could reach the moon, we wouldn't need $93 billion and 13 years to do it again. The delays, the failures, the heat shield problems, they prove we never had the capability. The rebuttal, different era, different requirements, different safety standards. Apollo astronauts accepted a death risk that would be unacceptable today. The technology isn't lost, it's obsolete. We're building something new. But here's the uncomfortable part. If the new thing is this broken, what does that say? Theory 2. The money is the point. The argument, Artemis isn't a space program, it's a jobs program, a funnel that moves taxpayer money to Boeing, Lockheed, and Northrop Grumman. The moon is just the excuse. They don't want to get there efficiently, because efficiency means fewer contracts. The rebuttal, NASA does incredible science, Mars rovers, James Webb, Voyager. The talent is real. But SLS specifically? Cost plus contracts specifically? That rebuttal gets a lot weaker. Theory 3. They're hiding something about the moon. This one goes deep. Alien structures on the far side. The reason we really stopped going. The reason Artemis II specifically flies around the far side. The side we can never see from Earth. The rebuttal. The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter has photographed the entire moon in high resolution. China landed on the far side in 2019 with Chang'e 4. No structures, no aliens, just rocks. But Artemis II will take the first ever photograph showing the complete disk of the moon and the complete disk of the Earth in a single frame. They'll be 4,700 miles behind the moon, farther from Earth than any human has ever been. And for a period of time, they'll be completely out of communication. Radio silence, no signal back to Earth. What happens during that blackout? We'll know what NASA tells us happened. That's it. Theory 4. April Fool's Day is the message. The argument, NASA is mocking us. They chose April 1st deliberately. It's a signal, a wink that the whole thing is theater. The rebuttal, launch windows are determined by orbital mechanics. The Earth-Moon alignment dictated April 1st. The next window was April 6th, then April 30th. It's physics, not a prank. But let me ask you this. If you're NASA and you absolutely know that moon landing conspiracy theories are widespread, and you know your launch window falls on April Fool's Day, and you know your heat shield has problems, and you know your program costs $93 billion, would you maybe, just maybe, consider waiting 5 more days for the April 6th window? They didn't. Make of that what you will. So, where does this leave us? 4 astronauts are in space right now, heading toward the moon on a heat shield that an astronaut called unsafe, on a mission that cost more than most countries earn in a year, in a program that feeds the very conspiracies it should be killing. I promised you I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I'm not. Here's what I actually think is happening, and it's worse than aliens. It's worse than a hoax, because it's real. The real conspiracy isn't that we didn't go to the moon, we did. The evidence is ironclad. The real conspiracy is that the people in charge of going back don't actually care about getting there. They care about the process of getting there, because the process is where the money is. Boeing gets paid whether SLS works or not. Lockheed gets paid whether the heat shield holds or not. Every delay, every redesign, every study and review is billable. The meter is running, and it never stops. Meanwhile, SpaceX is building Starship for $5 billion total, reusable, 100 tons to the moon, at a fraction of the cost, and NASA knows this. They chose SpaceX to build the Artemis III lunar lander. They trust SpaceX to land on the moon, but they won't trust SpaceX to get there. Why? Because switching to Starship would kill SLS, and killing SLS would kill contracts in every congressional district that matters. Alabama, Texas, Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, Utah. SLS has suppliers in all 50 states. That's not an accident. That's a strategy. It's called political engineering. You spread the money across enough districts that no senator will vote to cancel it, because canceling SLS means jobs in their state disappear. $93 billion isn't the cost of going to the moon. It's the cost of keeping senators happy. The astronauts, they're brave. They're incredible. They chose to sit on top of that rocket. But they're also pawns in a game that has nothing to do with exploration and everything to do with procurement. And that is the conspiracy. Not aliens, not holograms, not Stanley Kubrick filming in a studio. The conspiracy is that the most powerful country on Earth can't efficiently do something it did in 1969, not because it's impossible, but because efficiency isn't profitable. That's the question that should keep you up at night, not whether we went to the moon, but whether the system that's supposed to take us back is designed to never actually get there. 4 astronauts are heading to the moon right now. As I record this, Reid Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen are somewhere between the Earth and the moon, on a heat shield that might work, in a capsule that cost $1 billion, on top of a mission funded by 93 billion of your dollars. I hope they make it. I genuinely do, because they deserve. They accepted the risk, and what they're doing is historic. But I want you to remember something. When they splash down, if they splash down safely, NASA will celebrate, Congress will celebrate, Boeing and Lockheed will celebrate, and then they'll ask for more money for Artemis III. For Artemis IV for the lunar base, for Mars, and the meter will keep running. The moon isn't going anywhere, but your money is. If this video made you think, share it. Not for me, because these questions need to be asked. And right now, nobody in power is asking them. Subscribe, hit the bell, and tell me in the comments, do you trust NASA with another 93 billion, or is it time for a different approach? Because the moon is waiting. The question is whether we'll ever actually get there, or just keep paying to pretend we're trying.